Jerry really didn't address my arguments in his negative speech. However, he did seem to agree with me on some things, but there's some things that are left pretty unclear. So what I want to do is I want to deal with Jerry is trying to debate my book, but our proposition is just a microcosm of what I've written. And I'm going to deal with some of his arguments here at this time. We'll lay them out here for you. He's claiming that Marian teaches that Didasco is always authoritative teaching in his books. That's true. Certainly this is true in my books, Jerry, that's right. But it does not contradict my proposition. My claim in my books that Didasco is always authoritative type teaching is what they call a universal proposition, a universal affirmative, all S or P. It implies that Didasco is sometimes authoritative type teaching, some S or P. We're going to show this, and we're going to have to spend a little time showing how to reason, because Jerry has committed some fallacies in his reasoning. I told you he would, and he has. I taught logic for 30 years in college, and he's committed an elementary fallacy. We'll show it. My books imply my proposition. I'll show you what's called the square proposition chart. Now, all of the audience on the next break may go in there where my books are and get the square proposition charts. I'll be giving those to you, and so you may get them. And so here is this chart. All logical proposition can be put into four forms, one of four forms. There's only four basic forms that you can have for a logical proposition. That's it. There's an A-type proposition. What we have here is the A-type proposition right up here. All S or P. That's a universal affirmative. There's an universal affirmative, universal negative over here, an E-type proposition. And then there's the I-type proposition, that's the particular affirmative. And then there's the O-type proposition, the particular negative. All logical arguments have to be put in one of these four forms. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to illustrate this right here, and we're going to illustrate it with Samoans. Samoans are people. I'm going to say all Samoans are Protestants. S is for Samoans and P is for Protestants. If I have an A-type proposition, all S or P, I'm saying all Samoans are Protestants. I could have a negative proposition, universal, E-type proposition, no Samoans are Protestants. I could come down here and have a particular affirmative, I-type proposition, some Samoans are Protestants, and I could take an O-type proposition, some Samoans are not Protestants. Now let me illustrate this, how these relate to one another. Because once we see this, we can see the fallacy that he has committed to what he's doing. And it shoots down all of his basic arguments, because he's wanting to debate my book, not my proposition. That's what's happening here. And Jerry is doing what a number of brethren have done. They want to debate one particular part of my book and not my proposition here. All Samoans are Protestants. That can be falsified by saying that some Samoans are Protestants. If you say all are, and I say, and I prove that some are not Protestants, then obviously we've contradicted each other. These are contradictions right here. These two are contradictory. All right? We have what are called contraries to one another. All S or P, all Samoans are Protestants, and no Samoans are Protestants. Those cannot both be true, but they could both be false. Now, with regard to Samoans and Protestants, they're both false. I know Samoans. I taught in college for a number of years, and I taught for the FAA. And I've taught Samoans. And I know some, and I've known some that are members of the Lord's Church, and we're not Protestants. And I know one or two that are Roman Catholics, and they're not Protestants. But I know some that are Baptists and other groups, and they're Protestants. So some Samoans are Protestants, and some are not Protestants. These two propositions down here cannot both be false, but they could both be true. With regard to Samoans, they're both true. Now look at this. In my book, I say all SRP. I say that all instances of the usage of the word didasko are authoritative teaching in the New Testament. But if you read my book carefully, you'll see that I say I could be wrong on this point, and the bulk of my book is still true. That it's possible I might be wrong. But if I'm wrong, the other arguments still stand on their own. All right? So my proposition in my book, what I say, is all SRP, I say all didasko type teaching is authoritative teaching in the New Testament. I realize some of the passages he brought up. But that does not contradict, as he said. It does not contradict what I have written in my book, doesn't contradict what I've affirmed in this debate. And if we go back and look at my proposition, I didn't say all, I said authoritative didasko type teaching. If you read my proposition very carefully, you'll see that. And so my proposition does not. It does not say that all didasko type teaching is authoritative. All SRP implies some SRP. So my book, what I claim in it, does not contradict what I say. It would only contradict what he is claiming. He is saying this over here. He's gone to some passages, but he really didn't argue much on Colossians 3:16. He brought it up and just kind of left it hanging. I'd like you to make an argument on it, and I'll deal with it. Promise I'll deal with it. But make me an argument on Colossians 3:16. I don't know what you're saying there. You're kind of fuzzy. All SRP applies some. If all Samoans are Protestants, this means at least one Samoan is a Protestant. And when I say some SRP, I'm saying one or more. Now, these are called subcontracts. What he is saying down here, some SRP, he appears to be saying Colossians 3:16 and some other passages are not authoritative teaching in the didasko. I think that's what you're saying, Jerry. But if that's what you're saying, you haven't falsified what I've said. Because my proposition is basically some SRP. Look at it. Fox teaches in some of his books that all didasko teaching is authoritative teaching in the New Testament. From the square of opposition chart, it's manifest that this implies that some didasko type teaching is authoritative teaching in the New Testament. All right? There's no contradiction between what I wrote and what I've affirmed. My proposition, the Scriptures forbid a woman to authoritatively teach didaskene, the Scriptures to a man in every situation which a woman teaches a man authoritatively. Jerry, you seem to be agreeing with me that authoritative teaching is forbidden. That's what you seem. I'd like for you to clarify that. I'm going to deal with your questions here in a little bit. But I asked you to us have exchanged questions. You said no whenever we exchanged our email. Okay? But I like questions. So we'll go with questions. I'll have you some questions. Okay? But that's what I want you to answer. I want you to tell me that. Part of this proposition, underlined, is implied by my claims in my books. That all didasko type teaching is authoritative type teaching. And all didasko type teaching of man by a woman is forbidden. So what I'm saying here is that all didasko type teaching of a man by a woman is forbidden. If you say that in my books, then it implies that some is forbidden. If you go back to our square of opposition chart, you can see that. My proposition, not a universal affirmative, A-type proposition, all SRP. It's a particular affirmative. By denying my proposition, Jerry is making the claim that the contradictory proposition is true. I want you to look at the chart here in just a moment. My particular affirmative is some SRP. By denying my proposition, he has to be proclaiming no SRP. So we'll look at it in just a moment. In order to contradict my proposition, Jerry must prove that no didasko type teaching is authoritative type teaching. No SRP. My books imply my proposition, which in part implies some didasko type teaching is authoritative type teaching. What he must prove to contradict my proposition is this. I'm saying at least one passage is authoritative teaching, and women are forbidden to do authoritative teaching. Some, at least one. That would be 1 Timothy 2:12. In order to contradict this proposition, Jerry must prove no authoritative teaching by men or women is forbidden. That's what he has to say. Now notice here, I'm saying some SRP right here. And the only thing that contradicts that is no SRP. He is in a position, by denying my proposition, of having to say that authoritative teaching is never forbidden. That's what he has to be saying, logically. What Jerry's trying to do does not contradict my proposition. He is trying to come over here, let's look back at this, and he's trying to say some SRP, not me, and he thinks he is denying this, and that would be right if he were. If I had affirmed this, he would be correct. But I've not affirmed this, I affirmed some SRP in particular. So Jerry has barked up the wrong tree here. All right, look carefully. From the square of opposition chart, pardon me, I'm having throat trouble. We see that my proposition, some passages teach that the gospel type teaching is authoritative teaching. Some SRP is not contradicted by his proposition. Some S are not do. So, some Samoans are Protestants and some Samoans are not Protestants. Both of these can be true at the same time, and they are with regard to Samoans. So we can see how the proposition falls. His proposition falls. What Jerry has been forced to do, he really needs to deal with 1 Timothy 2:12 in order to contradict my affirmative proposition. Even if he proves that some instances where the gospel is used are not authoritative type teaching, he has not contradicted my proposition. I want you to go back and look at my proposition. My proposition didn't say the gospel type teaching is forbidden. My proposition said authoritative gospel type teaching is forbidden. And the word authoritatively is in there twice in the proposition. And Jerry denied that proposition. So if you deny it, what are you denying? Jerry agrees that the gospel is sometimes forbidden, 1 Timothy 2:12. I don't see how anyone can deny that, except those liberals who are saying it's just cultural, it doesn't apply at all. That's the only ones that do that. Jerry's not one of those. Okay? So Jerry agrees that the gospel type teaching is forbidden, and my proposition said authoritatively, and it used it twice in the proposition. So my point is made here. Jerry has not dealt with my proposition. He's debating my book, but not my proposition. We agreed to this proposition, Jerry, not to debate my book. Now, if there's something in my book that contradicts my proposition, that's fine, bring it up. But I said, yes, all SRP in my book, but my proposition said some SRP. Authoritative gospel type teaching is always forbidden. That I said, we can put that in a universal proposition. All authoritative gospel type teaching is forbidden. I can say that. And so he could say some authoritative gospel type teaching is not forbidden. Where is it, Jerry? Are you saying that when women sing, that they are teaching authoritatively by their singing? Tell us, is that what you're saying? If they're saying that, then you falsify my claim. I can reword this. All authoritative gospel type teaching is forbidden. I'll say that. Are you going to say some is not forbidden? Or are you going to say no authoritative teaching is forbidden? That's the contrary of it. The problem is, he's in a bind, I think. I really believe he's in a bind here. Look carefully. What Jerry must do to contradict my proposition that implies some passages use the word the gospel for authoritative type teaching, some SRP, is only contradicted by the proposition no passage uses the word the gospel for authoritative type teaching, no SRP. The square of opposition chart shows that. This debate is about whether or not 1 Timothy 2:12 is authoritative type teaching. Jerry, have you already agreed that 1 Timothy 2:12 is authoritative type teaching? Did I hear you say that? Let us know when you get up here. 5 minutes? Okay. I asked Jerry And Jerry used Proverbs 1:8, but it doesn't say that a woman taught an adult son. This could very easily be the mother teaching the son like Lois and Eunice did, Eunice did to Timothy. Timothy left with Paul when he was a teenage boy, and his mother and grandmother put that faith in him. That's the kind of faith that we have there. He's made an assumption on this. It's a pure assumption. Let me look at this. Let me look at this very carefully, right quick. A couple of his questions. I'll go ahead and deal with them. We should draw only such conclusions are warranted by the evidence. That's certainly true. I agree with that. Every time the word didasko or any form of didasko is used, a teacher-pupil relationship where the teacher has authority over the student is demanded, true or false. It really doesn't matter. I didn't affirm that in this debate. I did say that in my book, but I've not said that in this debate. You're debating my proposition, not my book. Which of the following is the correct answer? I'll deal with that third question later. What passage of Scripture constitutes didasko type teaching? There are about, it's used close to 100 times in the New Testament. I don't remember all the passages. The word didasko is used. You ask number 5, what kinds of teaching may a woman engage in concerning the man? Well, she may not engage in any authoritative teaching. You use matatuo, iduo, katagalo, katakao, and you haven't made any arguments from these. And I don't see any arguments. I don't see any reason to answer these. Some of these could be authoritative or non-authoritative. Could be. Some of them could. But Kaiduo and Katagalo and Katakao, just speaking, is all it is. Katakao is speaking. So I don't understand what you're asking here with regard to this. Now, let's look carefully at the few minutes I have. 3 minutes, okay. Let's finish this out. Jerry's one way to escape from my argument is this. Jerry could claim that my proposition is, in 1 Timothy 2:12, is a passage that uses the word didasko for authoritative type teaching. This would make it an A-type proposition. Jerry could be able to contradict my proposition by proving that some passage, meaning one passage, 1 Timothy 2:12, does not use the word didasko. That's precisely what I'd like to debate. All right? So what we get here, we come back to the square of opposition chart. And this will lay it out for you, and you can pick those up back there where my books are. How might Jerry force me to deal with the Colossians 3:16 argument? Jerry could admit that 1 Timothy 2:12 forbids a woman authoritative to teach a man. I think he said that. And claimed that women are authoritative in teaching men when they sing praises, songs, and spiritual songs. Now, if Jerry admits that 1 Timothy 2:12 is authoritative teaching and denies that Colossians 3:16 is authoritative teaching, he's admitting that they don't relate, it doesn't relate to my proposition. Remember, my proposition has the word authoritatively in it twice. And he's admitting, if he says they're not authoritatively teaching when they sing, then it doesn't relate to my proposition. It's a red herring. It is a diversion, a smokescreen. If it's authoritative teaching, we have another problem. If Jerry's bringing up the passage that does not relate to my proposition, it's a red herring. And if he's bringing up a passage that does not relate to my proposition, it's a red herring. A red herring is a smokescreen. It is designed to divert attention away from the real issue. Jerry has a dilemma here, and if he admits that 1 Timothy 2:12 forbids women authoritatively teaching men and admits that women are not authoritatively teaching men in Colossians 3:16, then he is implicitly admits to introducing a red herring. It's a diversion. If he admits that 1 Timothy 2:12 forbids women authoritatively teaching men and claims that women are authoritative teaching men in Colossians 3:16, then he has Colossians 3:16 contradicting 1 Timothy 2:12. He has a contradiction. All right? The second dilemma, if he denies that 1 Timothy 2:12 forbids authoritative teaching, he's implying that either no kind of teaching is forbidden in 1 Timothy 2:12, or that non-authoritative type teaching is forbidden. These follow from the principle excluded different which he used, and he recognized it's about validity. I think that's my time, right? Thank you for your attention. I have about 10 seconds. Let me remind you of this. I am not affirming that it's always authoritative in this debate. I do do believe that.